Hello, I'm Mr. Steinhauer, and this is 3rd and 4th grade science. Today, we're continuing to learn about simple machines. Specifically today, we're going to look at the wedge, the screw, and the wheel and axle. All you'll need to start today's activity is a piece of paper or a notebook and something to write with. That's going to help you draw out what I show you, and that is going to help you know what to do when it's your turn to do an activity from your home or from where you're working. Before we get started, let's review the definition of a simple machine. A simple machine is a device that changes the amount of a force or the direction of a force, or both. Simple machines that we have made together already and discussed include the inclined plane, the pulley, and the lever. So today you're going to see me use materials that I have here in my classroom at Whittier Elementary to construct a screw, a wheel and axle, and a wedge. Now keep notes to yourself using that piece of paper or your notebook. Or visually as you are watching, look at what I have and then think to yourself, what can I use to make my own wheel and axle, to make my own screw, or to make my own wedge? Because at the end of today's lesson, that's exactly what you're going to do. Pick one of these simple machines we discuss and build them. Let's get started. I've got my tape and my scissors. These are my tools that I'll be using. Then I am just going to be using some paper plates. Finally, for different pieces that I'll need, like the center of my screw and the axle for my wheel and axle, I just have two markers that I just snap together. You'll also see me tape them to help hold them together. So the first thing I'm actually going to build though is a wedge. That's going to be the simplest thing of the three simple machines to build. A wedge splits things. It comes in, pushing in, whether it's an axe chopping down a tree or a knife slicing off some butter. A wedge pushes in and splits or separates two different things. So by pushing in or down, it creates a splitting force. That's what a wedge does. Changes the direction of a force from down or in to splitting. So to make a wedge is really quite simple. I took one of my paper plates, get a nice good crease in here. Now I've made my wedge. It was this simple. The way I'm gonna actually test my wedge out, I could have a plate here, put my two markers on it, and you can see the markers are touching right now. I can use a wedge to split them. Simple as that. I can also use my wedge to split two plates, kind of overlap them a little bit, and then just by pushing down, I've caused the plates to move away from each other. I've caused them to split. That's a wedge. The next simple machine I'm going to make is going to be a wheel and axle. The way I'm going to do this, I'm going to use a plate like this, two plates together for each wheel. So I'm going to stack my plates like so. This is one wheel, a pair of plates, and this is another wheel, a pair of plates. I'm going to poke a hole in the middle using my scissors. I can actually take all four of these and I can mark a hole with my scissor, and if I do it right, then even that fourth plate will have a little notch in it or a little bump, and that's going to indicate where I'm going to cut a hole. Okay, so I'm going to find the middle of my plates and mark some holes there and then cut them. I'm also going to make sure that my axle will fit through the holes. So I'm going to have to cut my holes to be quite a bit bigger. One way that we can do this is by sticking my scissor blade through the hole and carefully turning away from the scissor blade, not toward it, because I don't want to cut myself. Next, I'm going to tape my wheels together like so. If I had a stapler, I could go around and I could staple these too. Maybe you have a stapler at home. Otherwise, my tape's working just fine. Got one wheel, one to go. So I've got two wheels here. Now I'm going to fit my axles through. Before I do that, I'm going to tape my axles together, or my axle. Going from 2 to make it 1. Right, so I've got one axle, two wheels, time to combine them. Okay, so it's a little wobbly, but I could go through and tape the outsides of my wheels where those axles connect. Now, a wheel and axle is a set of wheels which are not themselves a simple machine. Wheels, if you'll remember, are also part of a pulley. But a wheel and axle is used to move an axle. So a long rod like this, especially if you think about a car or a truck or even a school bus, think about how big and heavy those wheels are and how wide a bus is. That axle on its own is going to be really hard for you to turn, or for even the equipment of a car to turn. So that's why there are all the belts and different parts of a car that allow you to actually turn the wheels on your wheel and axle. When a wheel rotates, it's much easier to turn a wheel than the whole long, thin axle. But when a wheel rotates, then the axle also rotates, which allows the vehicle to move, or in this case, allows me to turn these wheels that I have. A wheel and axle is also what you'll see on a door. When you turn a doorknob, you turn the knob however it's shaped, but you're actually moving the axle, which then opens up the door or closes it. Wheel and axle. So now we've made a wedge, a wheel and axle. Now the third thing to make is a screw. For the screw, I'm going to use paper plates again, but I'm going to cut a portion out of them. I'm going to cut about 1/3 of the plate off. So that I've got 2/3 of a plate. I'll spin it around. Looks like I've got one whole plate. Okay, but I've got 2/2 of plates. So I'm going to also cut a little hole in the middle because I'm going to use my axle, only this time that's going to be the middle of my screw. So I cut a little hole out, a little notch from the middle. I've still got my tape on my axle so that my two markers are together. This is going to be the structure around which I build a screw. So I put a little bit of tape there just to kind of hold my first plate there. Now what we're going to focus on is the outer edge of our plate, or whatever it is that you're going to use to build a screw. We want the outer edge to rotate and to change its location as we rotate. So for example, if we're going to start way up here, then we want our screw to rotate and to continue to move down as it rotates. A screw turns, and while it turns, it pushes in or pulls out of something. That's a screw. So I'm taking the edge of my plate, I'm going to add a little bit of tape here. This tape is going to allow me to secure the next part of my screw. So here we're starting to see as I construct mine. If we started here, as we rotate, it actually goes down the marker. So I'm going to add a little bit more tape here and a little bit of tape to my base, and then we'll really see how it rotates. So here is my nearly completed screw. Again, if we start up here and we rotate down, we're going to actually go down as we spin. I could continue to add plates and continue to spin, and then it would look more and more and more like a screw, like you might find at a hardware store or even in a wall of your home. So we've got a screw. As it rotates, it also goes up or down, or pushes in or pulls out. A wedge pushes down and splits something in two directions. And a wheel and axle works so that as we turn a wheel, the axle in between them is what actually moves. So now it's your turn. Thinking about what you saw and about the notes that you kept track of, build your own simple machine at home or wherever you are right now. Maybe it's a wedge you're going to make. Maybe you're going to cause something to rotate while it pushes in or pulls out. That's a screw. Or maybe you're making part of a car, a bike, or any vehicle, the wheel and axle. However you make it, when you're done, share it with a loved one and explain to a loved one what you made and how that simple machine changes the amount or direction of a force. You can also share it with us with KCPS Homeroom by posting it on social media and tagging us. As always, it's been my pleasure having you in class today. I'm Mr. Steinauer, and I'll see you next week.